morning when they came into school. They they are showing so much independence already. They know how to, some of them didn't really ever get out of their car on their own, and now they know how to hop right out. You see that they try and experiment a variety of ways of like, getting their body out of the car seat in the car, and they can pick up that tote bag just like we told you that they could, and they can carry their things in. They can find their classroom in this big school compared to their little bodies, and so they really do know how to get themselves from their car and their home environment and their parents and their siblings or whatever else is in the car and come into their classroom. And what you don't see every morning is how they greet the different members of the admin team or different adults they see in the hallway and their peers. They they enter like their classroom area and hallway and are at their cubbies, and they start to socialize with their friends. They have greeting routines and rhythms that they have with their closest friends in their room. They greet their teacher. They're already aware without any adult intervention or coaching that it's time to put their indoor shoes on and it's time to hang up their bag and take off their coat. And they know more or less how to place their belongings in their cubby. And the first couple of days of school, first few weeks, the teachers would guide them with questions. Where do you think that can go? Or how do we hang that up? Or what do you need now? As a framing for how to have the students come in. But now they know what to do and they know how to do it. Um, and they take their time, and the adults are patient. And sometimes they're interrupted by having to run and use the bathroom or a really interesting conversation with a friend about the weekend. But eventually they find their way into the classroom and they know to wash their hands and to get started on choosing a work or a material. They probably were thinking about what they were going to do on the car ride in or in the hallway. Some friends don't know quite what they're going to do, but they will walk around and watch other friends work and get started. And they really know how to get themselves into a community in the morning for the day to start. And there isn't a lot of adult coaching or intervention except to ask questions and to guide. And so I think that's the first most important intervention and I mean, observation. And it's probably one thread that we'll think about throughout this Zoom that we often get into a habit as adults to kind of over narrate a child's experience and their day and tell them each step, okay, now it's this and now it's this. And we kind of even can hear our voices get sing-songy and kind of not even sound like ourselves. And we over direct and over guide the child. And that's something that the Montessori teachers work really hard to not do. They place themselves in the background and they recognize that this is the child's start to their day and it's important that they get going. And so in the classroom, the children have a rhythm to their day. There's kind of two parts of a day. There's the morning work cycle, you know, anything that happens before their lunch and recess time. And then there's after their recess and lunch time, which for some of our children is a nap time and then a wake up and back into the classroom. And for some, it's another work cycle in the afternoon or a specials class or kindergarten art or something. But these sections of the day become very predictable opportunities for the children to know that there's an ebb and a flow and a way that we work in the classroom and a way that the day goes. And that predictability and constant, even if every day looks very different, even if the work that the children are doing is different every day, that is something that is a very big part of their expectation is that there's a rhythm. Even our youngest children, our toddlers, they know what to expect when they come in. They are also independent. And if you think about what it took for the toddler child to separate from their parents, that was a big maturation point. And it wasn't, there wasn't, if you recall back, those of you who survived toddler phase and the tears, if you think back to how the teachers worked the children through this transition phase, it wasn't over adulted or over spoken. There wasn't a lot of, you know, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. There was just sharing in an experience, observing, being with them, accompanying them, giving them choices with which to guide their activity and their desires, and matching their emotions with an opportunity for expression. and for work and for activity, and teaching them that when they feel something, they can do something about it. So that's really important. And the primary day continues as an extension of the toddler day. It has parts and rhythms in it that are really important. And this is something that you can think about echoing in your home, and we'll talk about the home part in a bit later. But this, like I said, this level of predictability is really what helps the child to integrate into our school environment so young and so quickly, because they know what to expect, and they know when they come in they're going to wash their hands, and they know after they wash their hands they're going to get to work. And knowing what comes next is also a way to avoid anxiety in children. So you've probably heard about presetting or transitioning children. When we give them the opportunity to know what is next, they know where they can be in that. And that is something that helps them to not be anxious or to not be worried, both at home and at school. So in our classrooms, whether the child is 18 months through 6 years old, they're given the opportunity to have adults with them who let them solve their own problems. We can sometimes seem aloof as Montessori teachers, or maybe way too patient, or sometimes in a moment uninvolved. But when we are watching a child face something that they are encountering, whether it's the desire to do a work, or the desire to have snack, or even getting their shoes on and off, whatever they're facing that they're asked to do independently, when we as adults wait and we don't intervene in what they do, but we watch. We watch for their readiness, and we watch for how the environment might need to be changed. But mostly we watch to see that the child really isn't needing our help. When we do that, what we're doing is we're allowing the children to think for themselves and to solve a problem, and also to believe in themselves that they really are capable of solving this problem, that they are trustworthy, that they can trust themselves, and that they're being trusted by the adults around them to do something that's significant in their life and to them. And that's a really powerful opportunity that the adults are giving to that child. And this ability to problem solve and think for themselves is the beginning of, critical thinking and executive functioning. And when we talk about that, as the buzzwords continue for them more in elementary and middle school, everybody wants children who can have, executive functioning. It's because it begins with not being over adulted or over guided through those struggle points in the classroom. So the rhythm of the day, as the children continue to work, there are sometimes community gatherings where the teachers are drawing the children in all together, and they're going to solve a problem together, talk about something that they need to do that day. Sometimes they're all receiving a lesson or some information, and it's a gathering point and a gathering place for the children to be in community with each other and to reset expectations. And it does kind of mirror that energy that we have in our homes as families. And that's part of, the Children's House is the name of a Montessori 3 to 6 environment. And it's not an accident that it can feel like a home community. So one thing that, before I pass it to Lynette, as we start to talk about how this rhythm and routine and structure and not over adulting can really translate into the home. I thought of something that is kind of poignant in my opinion. When I was a primary teacher, and this applies to toddler teachers, to people working with these really young children who are going to launch off into elementary school one day. Our role as a primary teacher was always to render ourselves obsolete. And that can feel like a big honor, but it's also really heavy. We know we're doing our work and our job well when they no longer need us. And that's the sign that magic has occurred. And I think it's also a metaphor for parenting. Our whole role as fellow journeymen and women on this path of life with our children is to be in front of them at first, but then eventually alongside of them, and then eventually kind of behind them. We do our job when we render ourselves obsolete as parents, and not obsolete in terms of that they don't need us. That's not ever the case. But when they are able to do life, and parts of life or aspects of their day or their life on their own, then that's how we know that we've set them up and to do well, beyond us. And I think that that's something that we think about a lot here in our choices as teachers. So, Lynette, I think that's a good segue into the home. I'm so happy that you're here, Lynette. Lynette is joining us, and again, as Arena said, she is an assistant teacher in primary and also a Montessori mom. And I'm so grateful to her for sharing all of this wisdom that she has here.
Thank you. And yes, you ended at such a perfect spot. Um, so, hi everyone, I'm Lynette. And as Erin said, I am a parent to a 4-year-old. So he's in his second year in Naomi and Ben's classroom at school. And a little bit about me, I last year was my first year teaching Montessori. I had very minimal experience with the Montessori method, just like my own research that I did when I was teaching in traditional schools for different activities that I felt would fit into my classroom at the time, and then a very brief summer camp experience with the Reggio Emilia method. So last year was my first full immersion into the Montessori method. Um, and it was very eye-opening and really helpful for my own parenting. Um, and before I dive in, I just want to say that I can only ever speak from the truth of my own experience. So, take what works, anything else, let it fly. I'm just letting you know what I've experienced in the Montessori as a Montessori teacher, and then how that has influenced my parenting. And I'll just give you some examples of like the things that I had to shift, and things that I had to do. And hopefully, that helps you. So, as Erin said, the becoming obsolete thing is a super powerful statement, because that's kind of the first step I had to take last year when I started Montessori. It was to work on my own mindset. Um, so, my favorite moment that I had last year was when I first started setting up the classroom with Stephanie, and everything was glass. And I was like, "Hey, Steph, is this for the students? Like, is this gonna stay out, or like, what's happening?" And she was like, "Yeah, this is the materials." I'm like, "But everything is glass." She's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, great." And so school starts, and I'm just a helicopter teacher. I'm just like hovering every time the kids are getting snack or pouring their water, because like the carafe is glass, the little mason jars are glass, the plates are glass, all of the materials for practical life are glass. So I'm just the first 2 weeks of school, I was freaking out. Internally, externally, I was fine, but internally, I was freaking out. And then finally, I don't remember when, but pretty early in the school year, the unthinkable happened, the unthinkable to me, and glass broke. A student broke glass, and I was like, "Don't panic, don't like." I froze because I didn't want to react in a way that would scare the children, but it was so magical because every child in the class stopped what they were doing and said, "Broken glass." And then Stephanie said, "Okay, thank you." She went and got the broom and she cleaned it up. And the students were just like, some of them even kept working. And then the person that broke the glass just stood like frozen with the tray and didn't move because they knew it wasn't safe. And then all the kids around were like, broken glass, like letting the first year kids know that they couldn't go near the broken glass. And then every subsequent time that a glass broke, the same thing happened. And then the first years, seeing the older children do that, they also knew what to do. And so that was a really powerful moment for me, because I think like of when I started to learn that it's my mindset that had to change, because like it's okay that the glass broke. We can learn how to clean it up and how to be safe. And after that moment, I realized too, I was like, at the time, my son he still had like kid cups, like not a sippy cup because he was old enough, but with the two handles, or like made of silicone or whatever. And so after that, I was like, I think you can use glass and it's okay. So I switched his cups at home, and I started like allowing him to do more things in the kitchen because I realized that it wasn't it wasn't his capacity that was lacking. It was my mindset and my own aversion to being inconvenienced, right? Because like, oh well, if the glass breaks, I'm gonna have to clean it, or like if this happened, I'm gonna have to do it. And it's like, well, that's my job, you know. There's no mistakes and accidents are going to happen because he's learning how to be a human. He's learning how to be a person. And so are all my students. And so seeing my students being able, who are the same age as my son, being able to handle these like accidents or like these big mistakes, I realized I was like, oh, okay, so it's not that he can't, it's that I'm not letting him. And I had to work hard on that. It was a little bit hard for me because back to Aaron's point, it's like he doesn't need me in the same way that he's been needing me. And it's okay. Like obviously, you know, we bring this little human into the world and they're completely helpless at first. And they need us for every single thing of their survival is up to us. Like they can't turn over by themselves. They can't burp. They can't do anything. And we're doing everything. But as they grow, I realized like as my son is growing, I have to keep changing my mindset because he's going to need me less and less in certain areas. And it doesn't mean he doesn't need me at all. I don't think that's ever going to be the case because I still need my mom. Like I still call her for stuff sometimes. And so it's a matter of just shifting the way that I relate to parenting and how I can show up um, in ways that support his independence and that foster that what's the word um, that foster his sense of autonomy so that I do become obsolete eventually and he can do all these things. So I would say that like that's like the biggest lesson that I've learned so far from last year, my first year as a Montessori teacher, that I have to allow for his capacity to shine through and divorce myself from my own need to like not have accidents or not clean up or you know all these things. I also had to realize that like perfectionism has no place in parenting because he's a human being and he is going to make mistakes, and I my job isn't to stop him from making mistakes, but to learn from the mistakes. So if he breaks a glass, it's okay. We clean it up. Or if he's pouring juice and he pours too fast or he misses the cup, it's okay. We'll clean it up. And I'll let him clean it up. And if it's still sticky and I'm like, wow, that's the worst cleanup ever, I keep that to myself. And then when he's not looking, I'll clean it better. And it's okay because then he had the chance to do that on his own, to make the mistake and fix it. And, you know, it wasn't the end of the world. So that's like one of my biggest things that I could share is to just start working on your own mindset and to allow yourself to believe in your child because they're so much more capable than you think. Um, and even so, we're like, it's almost the end of October. We started school in September, and you know, there were friends that when school started back in September, I had a couple students who were having a lot of trouble with changing their shoes, and my first instinct is like, oh, I want to help you. Let me help you do it. And then I was like, no, I'm not gonna help. I'm gonna, and I do this with my hands a lot so that I'm not doing the thing. And I just coached him through it. And I said, okay, so first you're gonna use this finger to hook it in the back, and then you're gonna use this finger to do the Velcro and hold the tongue. And I had to say that a lot. I had to say that every single day. I had to repeat those instructions. But guess what? He comes in now and he changes his shoes without me having to say anything. So it's yeah, they're so amazing and they're so capable if you just allow them to be. And then another thing that I learned as a Montessori teacher, I've learned so much from Stephanie because my co-teacher, she has so much experience. And one thing I've heard her say, um, it's okay, it's for to teach them patience. Like it's okay for you not to be available for your child, especially if you know they're in our school. The teachers are not always like we're not always available. It's 22 kids and two teachers, so and Stephanie has to give lessons and sometimes I'm busy. And so learning that was also helpful for me because I was of the mind that like even if I'm busy, I have to drop what I'm doing and pay attention. And that's not the case. It's okay for them to wait and learn patience. It's okay for them to be bored. My son just learned that word. So now it's so boring. I'm so bored. And I'm like, it's okay. You just be bored. You have plenty of things, plenty of options. You want to stare at the wall, let your brain work. It's all right. And it's okay to say things like, listen, mommy is not available right now. Mommy needs space. They know that language because it's the language that we use in school, and they very frequently have those types of situations with their friends or with their teachers where they have to wait or they have to be okay with the friend that doesn't want to play with them in that moment. And I only my son is an only child, so sometimes I get that feeling of like, oh, I have to play with him, like, oh my god, I have to entertain him because of this and that. And I really had to let go of that because I'm a human too. I don't want to put myself in a position where my son doesn't realize that I'm just a person, because in that it sets me up for failure in the future when he does realize it. So I very frequently say, my body is not available right now, so please don't touch me, or please don't sit on me in this moment. Or I say, like, I understand that you want my attention, but if you see that I am busy right now, when I'm finished with my task, I will come to you. Or I also say, I'm sorry, buddy, but I am only one person and I can only do one thing at a time. So you need to wait until I am done with this task, and then I will help you with your task. Um, and it's okay. It's okay to use that language. We use that language at school. It's not harsh, it's the truth. And you can say it lovingly. And in the moments when they're not, um, in distress, you can have the conversations. Like I've had conversations with my son where I tell him, hey, so no matter what happens, you know that mommy loves you. And that doesn't change, even if, we're having a fight, or even if I have to put you on a timeout. But even though I love you and that doesn't change, it's also my responsibility to teach you how to be a person in the world. And there's certain things that we just don't do. And disrespect is one of them, or, whatever the thing is. Like it's okay to have those honest conversations, even if you think it's going over their head. It's not, because it's landing where it needs to land for where they are in that moment. And you're setting yourself up so that as they get older, this conversation isn't something completely new when it comes up as they get older. If you're talking about mutual respect, boundaries, patience, and all of these things, if you're talking about them when they're 3, by the time they're 10, it's, you have like such a solid foundation. So it's okay to just be honest with your kids. I'm also honest with my son and letting him know, like, hey, I know that you're feeling big feelings right now. I'm feeling big feelings too. And that's why I yelled in that moment. And I'm sorry that I yelled. I know I just felt so frustrated because you weren't listening to me. And this is a real conversation that we had. And then he said to me, well, you know what, mama, when you yelled at me, it really hurt my heart. And I said, and I'm so sorry that it hurt your heart. So can we agree, if mommy tries not to yell at you, you can try to listen to mommy better so that we can both meet in the middle and not have our hearts hurting? And he was like, okay. And I don't know how much of that he's really processing, but like the conversation is happening and restoration is happening. And I feel like it all ties into when you have that moment where you can't give him your attention, you have such a strong, solid foundation of like good communication and loving communication, that it's not going to be the end of the world if you're like, hey, I'm not available right now, I need some space, can you go do something else? And it's going to be totally fine. um, Another thing, going back to their capacity, so we are a classroom community. We talk a lot about that at school, that we're a classroom community and we take care of our classroom environment, and it's all of our responsibilities to keep our environment, safe, clean, tidy, beautiful. And so that can translate to at home too. And again, I know how it sounds because like we're all toddler and primary parents here. So you're like, what do you mean? They need to have responsibilities. I promise you, you can do it. So at school, they are responsible for cleaning up their works. If even if it's not your own work, you can clean it up because you're helping keep your classroom environment clean, and we help each other. And sometimes they say that, but I wasn't doing that work, and I say, and that's okay. We're helping each other, and we can clean it, and that can translate to at home. And you can give your children small responsibilities because one, it gives them a sense of being part of their home environment. Like they having responsibility makes them feel like, oh, like to them it's like, oh, I'm a grown up too, and it's not that they're a grown up too, obviously, but they just feel like part of your home community. And so for example, my son's responsibility is to unload the dishwasher, all the silverware of the dishwasher. And he does it. He takes all the forks and the knives, the butter knives and all that, and puts it away. And that's like his one thing because he can reach the dishwasher and he can reach the silverware drawer. And so that's like his thing that he does. And then I bought him a child-sized broom and dustpan, so that way he can like, over the summer we had kinetic sand, which I do not recommend. What a mess. But he cleaned up his mess. He swept it every time he made a mess with the kinetic sand. So just giving them responsibilities to so that they can feel part of their home environment is super helpful. And then be like sticking to those. So being consistent with what your expectations are. Now, I'm not saying like, you're going to give your kid, your 3-year old or 4-year old rubber gloves and, Clorox spray. Of course not. But little things here and there that they are capable of handling. And you can try different things. Like, let's say, like, I don't know, cleaning the mirrors, and you say, okay, I'll spray and you wipe, and you let them do that. And don't get me wrong, like they might do it horribly and you hate it, and then you have to do it again later when they're not looking, and that's okay. The point is to make them feel like they're responsible for their environment. And it helps you too, because then you're setting yourself up for a chore chart as they get older. Because when they're little, you're not going to have that. They can't read, and you don't want too much responsibility. So you just plant the seed. Like, you have this responsibility. You have to clear your plate after dinner every time and put it in the sink, or you have to organize the shoes. All your shoes have to be organized in the front. Just something little that they know that they have to do every day, and that you can remind them to do every day, so that they feel part of their home community. um, and then another lesson that I learned um, is that sometimes I hinder um, I hinder his ability to have independent moments because I'm in a rush. So if I don't know, we're going either, like, let's say we're going to school and I have to leave at a very specific time for my house. If I leave even 3 minutes past our time, I get stuck behind a school bus and then I'm late. So I'm like, come on, get your shoes on. Let's go. We're late. We're late. So what I had to do is realize like it is not his responsibility to time keep. So if we're late, it's because it's me, it's on me. I'm the adult. So what do I have to do in order to allow him the time to be slow in putting on his shoes? Because he's doing the thing, like he's putting on his shoes, but he's just doing it. He's taking his time to do it. And that's not a bad thing. I don't want to be feeling frustrated the whole time that he's doing the thing I'm asking him to do, but he's not doing it fast enough because I'm late. So I've had to allocate my time better, not just for when we go to school, but on weekends too. So it's like if I have to be somewhere at 2, and so that means I have to leave my house at 1:15, let's say, because it's far, then by 12:30 we're getting ready, because I want you to be able to take your time. I don't want to have to repeat myself. And that's something that I work on too, where I want to say the thing one time, like, hey, it's time for us to go. Will you please get your water and put on your shoes? And then in turn, I'm like, don't say it again. Don't say it again. Don't say it again. Let him do it. Let him take his time. Because, like, it's just parenting is a very amazing, rewarding, and challenging experience. And so I do a lot of internal dialogue so that I can allow him to be independent. So it's like after I did that, where I started like just clocking myself better and timing myself better, we've had no problems, because then I'm like, hey, it's time to go. Let's get our shoes on. And then I do my self therapy internally. I'm like, don't say it again. You don't need to repeat it. He heard you. He's going to do it. Let him do it on his own time. Let him do it. Stop. Don't do it. Stop. Don't say it again. And like so many times I have to say it, I promise you. So it's okay if you do that too. Um, I bet you a lot of people can relate to that. So yeah, just like give yourself time so that you allow them that independence to like get ready on their own and without you having to rush and without you feeling frustrated. And then for me, it's like if I feel frustrated about something that like he's not necessarily doing anything wrong, it's just like I'm late and I need you to move faster, then I have to deal with the guilt that whatever my tone was or whatever I said, or like, oh my gosh, what if he feels like he just can't take his time and I did this? And it's like, in order to avoid that whole thing, I just give myself more time. Um, and one last thing that I can share that has been really helpful for me as well, ever since starting working at Montessori, is to realize that like every year I'm a parent to a new child. So like the child, like who my son is now in his second year of Montessori is not who he was last year. And so how I show up as a parent can't be the same as how I showed up last year. And that transition is really hard, especially let's say from like toddler, because you're going from like, let's say, what's the sweet spot around like 10 to 12 months, like right around that first birthday, there's like this shift of like what their capacity is and the things that they're doing. And it just keeps growing exponentially from there. Their brain development, their capacity, the things they're absorbing, the things they're understanding. And so as they're developing, you are also developing because how you showed up to parent your 10-month-old is not how you need to show up to parent your 18-month-old. Those are two completely different babies. And obviously, the foundation of who they are and their personality, that's not going to change. I mean, it will evolve, but that's not what I'm saying, right? Like you're parenting the same child, but not the same human with the same capacities as before. And so I think that it's really important to just sit with that truth and allow yourself a moment of grief. It's okay to be sad that it's not your baby anymore. It's totally okay to feel like a little pang in your chest when your little 2-year-old is like, "No, mommy, I don't need you to hold my hand," or "I can do it. I don't need you to do it." Like hearing those words, "I don't need you," the first time that you hear them from your kid, it's going to be hard and it's okay to feel sad about that. But two things can be true at once. You can feel sad and still allow for them to do the thing on their own and still allow for them to have to make mistakes doing the thing, because that's the other piece of it where it's like, yeah, I know that you want to, and I've said this, I know you want to, but, and it's like that, don't do that, don't say that, just say, okay, I believe in you, why don't you try it, and if you need help, I will help you. And if you're watching and they're doing the thing so wrong but they're trying so hard, allow it to happen so that you see yourself evolving with your child. Um, and yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynette.
You're welcome.
Um, yeah, I think something that you just said that I think is a good, yeah, we should clap. There's lots of claps going up. Anecdotally, my 22-year-old FaceTimed me like seconds before this Zoom to be like, Mommy, I need to talk to you on my way home from work. So they really always need you. So that is the good news, but they do need you to show up in different ways. And I love that you're encouraging us to keep evolving and growing, because that's also a Montessori lesson, is to be lifelong learners and to trust the child, and to also see the child who isn't yet there, like believing in their capacity to grow in independence and capacity is really important. So thank you for that. I wanted to talk a little bit, bringing it back to the classroom and home connection a bit. The way that when Lynette was speaking about our classroom communities and the fact that the children really do get accustomed to feeling like a family type community, we have a lot of language in the primary environments of belonging. Like, this is how we do things in our classroom. And that type of language is really good for the home environment, and all of these little tidbits that you might have been picking up while Lynette is speaking of like how will we do this in our lives and with our children. using language like, well, this is how our family drives home from school, or this is what we do when we wake up in our house, or this is how we handle putting on our shoes before we go. Like all of that belonging language is how we invite the children into these processes of trying something themselves or being a part of the environment. So, with that in mind, one area of rhythm and routine in the home that we can talk about is bedtime. And Arena asked me to share with you a sentence I've been saying lately. Bedtime challenges have been in the air, so don't worry. Maybe it's none of you on the Zoom, or maybe it's all of you, but it's been a Woodland Hill struggle together. And so what we've been saying is that bedtime for the toddler through primary student, and honestly for all of us, starts as soon as you get home from school. And while that sounds like a dramatic thing to say, if you think about, like Lynette said, in her like backwards way of like starting at the end and coming back, like what time do we need to be there? So how do I leave space for this? That's that same mentality. Most children are not getting enough sleep if they're not going to bed when they first are tired. They can be going to bed when they're overtired, and then they have a hard time falling asleep. That's your sign that your child is overtired. They're having a hard time falling asleep. And then that means there's a struggle to get them up in the morning, which means it's a struggle to get to school. And then we just are in a struggle cycle, which can really impact our ability as adults to do all of that beautiful letting go that Lynette talked about because we're on the struggle bus with from the night before. So if you think about having the children going to sleep when they first seem like they're ready to do that. And I'm not going to say a time because then we're all going to get fixated on the time and we all have different age children. So offline, we can talk about your individual situation. We'd be happy to. But when you come home, that's your pre-bedtime. Your car ride home is some of the decompressing from the day, the ways that you unpack and your belongings and come into the home and get ready for the evening. That's the start of your whole evening routine. You know, children are getting their baths and they're eating their food, and this is going to look different for each of you in your home because in some seasons of life, dinner can't be the gathering time. Sometimes it's breakfast, depending on when your child is waking up. But what you can do is give them something to eat so that they're not hungry, and you can read their stories to them, and you can have a gathering time, almost like that community meeting at school, where we're listening to one another, we're solving problems together, we're setting expectations, we're making each other laugh, and we're having that touch point with each other for being a family or being, you know, our own safe and home individuals, letting your child release some of their self-control. They've been keeping it in all day. They've been working really hard, and you're going to be their safe place. And that's going to come with some emotions or some giggles or some needs from you. And making sure that you take some time as parents to disconnect after a child's school day is really, really important. You can for sure be unavailable to the rest of the world for an hour or two so that you can stay giving your child the appropriate amount of undivided attention, which will complement when you're doing what Lynette suggested, which is so important to say, I'm actually working on this thing that's really important for me to be working on. So you can sit next to me and work on your really important thing, or you can find something else to do. I'll be right with you. That, in contrast to that concentrated time of belonging and gathering, is a really great rhythm and routine for your child to be able to discern when is togetherness time and when is, you know, parallel work time. And that also echoes what they do in the classroom. So choosing how you speak to your child about this, what your non-negotiables are for your family. You know, this is how we get ready for bed. This is how we get ready for dinner, or this is how we will go to bed. All of that is the way you can start soon on doing something new. Like, we've decided from now on, this is how we do this. And your child will usually go along with it. It feels exciting to join something or to work on a project together. And the family project can be gathering time or dinner time or bedtime. Um, so I think that that's what I have for that section. But I do know that we would really like to open it up to some question and answers. And I think we're all available for that, Arena and me and Lynette. Um, yeah, does anybody, Arena, are you going to maybe invite and moderate? Great. Arena will be in charge of
Yes.
of our Q&A.
Hello, everyone. So feel free to put any questions in the chat or just unmute yourself. We're here to answer any questions. And you both are so great. And I agreed with you, Erin, especially when you said the bedtime thing. It blew my mind the first time I heard it. It's like, oh yes, all
Because
of it is
Mirabelle was
bedtime.
going to bed too late. That's what
She
happened.
was.
Mirabelle was
She
going to bed
was.
too late.
I put her to
Yeah.
bed at like, well, not to get like granular, but like for me, 7:30, 7:45, and she definitely was missing her window for sure. I was like, it's taking too long. And now I'm putting her down at like 7 solidly. We read a book and she goes to sleep, and it's like, wow, oh my goodness, that little shift. I'm telling you, it makes a difference. Yeah. Questions. Wow. We just hit it all.
Oh, I'm sure there's questions.
Mm-hmm.
Or Lynette and I will just have to tell you more things.
Let it simmer for a bit.
What are you struggling with? What do you feel like maybe you don't understand about how your child is in the environment versus how they are at home?
I can share one thing while you percolate on some questions.
Mm.
One thing I thought of while you were speaking, Erin, is so I didn't touch on tantrums. So one thing I wanted to share, if your child is fed, safe, and clean, like there's nothing, you know, that needs to be cleaned off their body, let them have the tantrum. It's okay.
Oh man.
Is okay. I know that sounds hard. I know it feels hard. You want to comfort. And I'm not saying don't comfort at all,
Mm-hmm.
but let them feel it for a little bit because emotional regulation, so from birth to around, I want to say, I don't want to lie to you. So I want to say from birth to around like 1, I'm not sure, Erin, you can correct me. Emotional self-regulation happens with you. So, like when your baby is crying and you hold your baby, if you're also feeling anxiety, your baby will not calm down. So, you have to calm down so your baby can calm down. So, it's a very real thing that you need to be there for them in those stages. But as they get older, the point is for them to be able to emotionally self regulate without you. So, if they are having a tantrum, and it's especially if it's an unreasonable one, um, let them let them feel it, and then after they're done, and they will be done eventually, um like be firm, be consistent in not going to them right away, and after they get to a place of calmness, then you can talk about it. You can say, wow, it seemed like you really had a hard time, do you want to talk about it? And then they're going to say what they're going to say, and then you can be like, wow, it sounds like you were feeling so many big feelings, and I understand that it's really hard when you feel all those things in your body and you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what to do with it, so you had to let it out like that. How about we think of some other ways that you can let go, you can feel these feelings that don't involve you screaming and crying or being disrespectful to mommy, or whatever the thing is that they did. But just give them, and if it makes you feel better, you can time it. Be like, all right, depending on their age, like you can, if they're 3, let them cry for 3 minutes. If they're 4, 4 minutes, 5 5 minutes, etc. And but just let them have a moment to be with their feelings before you like step in.
Yeah, I think that's such a good one, Lynette, because honestly, I think the first time your child tantrums, it's like a little shocking to the system. It's like, oh my God, like are you in pain or like what? But then you start to realize, like, wait a second, this all the things that you said, like you're fed, you're fine, right? I'll share a tantrum story with you before we get to some of the questions in the chat. I was in the Smoothie King parking lot. Okay, so I'm in public. Um, my daughter wanted a straw to do what with, I don't know, but she wanted this very particular straw, and I'm like, you can't have the straw. We're not gonna play with the straw. Like I'm thinking of all this, we're just not gonna have the straw. Screaming down the Smoothie King parking lot, and I'm like, oh my God, we're in public. So one of the things too that was like important for me to remember as well is like, it actually doesn't matter that we're in public. It's actually okay that she's feeling this really big emotion right now. She's upset because she wanted this straw. Her reasoning, not mine. But I also had to have a pretty firm boundary like, it's okay that you're feeling these really big emotions over this Smoothie King straw. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to kick. We're not going to freak out. We're not going to run in the parking lot because you're upset about this Smoothie King straw. Have your big emotions. And then very quickly we moved on. It was like, it's like, oh, so I guess we're done now. And that's how it goes sometimes, but you really have to let them go through the motions because it is the first time that they're feeling these big emotions. So let me go to the chat. Let's see what's happening. Okay, first question. Currently struggling with great behavior at school, but less than stellar behavior and listening at home.
I can start with that. So the good news is that this is incredibly universal,
Mm-hmm.
and there are, well, there's a neutral way to see this, which is that your child, especially their first years in a new environment, so that's their first year of toddler, their first year of primary, and their first couple of months of every subsequent year, they are going through so much self-regulation at school, and they are balancing so much input. You know, we are intentionally a sensory rich environment because we know that in this plane of development, children are absorbing through all of their senses. So on purpose, their senses are overwhelmed. And in a good way, like it's good for them to be receiving all of this input because they need it and they crave it. At the same time, they have been filled all day long with peers and different adults and different opportunities. And so they come home to their safe place and they're done. They're done self-regulating. And that doesn't mean that they're off the hook. That's not what I mean, but they definitely are going to have reached their capacity, their first capacity for the day by the time they get home to you. The piece of good news that is that your child is slowly learning a concept that we don't realize we also do as adults, which is that we emotionally code switch a bit. We know where we are to maintain higher external expectations for our behavior than other places. And, you know, the concept of letting your hair down or, you know, going home and, you know, tossing your tie off and you're putting your work clothes, you know, aside. And that's what they're doing emotionally is they know that their parents will tolerate them in a way that their teachers can't or won't, and that's not a bad thing. What does need to happen is that you provide those gathering spots or those outlets, whether you know your child needs to be drawn in or whether you know your child kind of needs a minute in a corner or a literal soft place to land, whether there's some type of playground or physical activity, jump rope, trampoline, something after school that they do at home that lets them have some release, whether they're just really hungry, some type of, and this will change for your child. It'll be different depending on the child, and also as that child grows, it'll be different what they need from you in their post-school and you in your post-work selves, and you need to get together and come up with that as a family. But after that, it's okay to be like, okay, let's regroup. So now moving forward, this is what you can expect from your child. And high expectations are really important. Consistent boundaries are really important, but being reasonable with where they are and what their capacity is at night after they've just had a whole day is really important. So for some seasons of your child's life, there need to be fewer after school activities. For some seasons of their life, there will need to be more because they need to get some angst out. And while that sounds like maybe an impossible thing, you'll know it. You'll see it and you'll see what your child needs. And there will be a moment inside of you where you'll say, ooh, I think we need to do either one or the other. And that might mean saying a phrase that I love to say in my house, which is, I've changed my mind. I realize now that we are doing something that is unsustainable. We need to change it up. And when you have a history with your children that you will build of making decisions that are good for them, they will trust you. And it's okay to have to change your mind and not go to the birthday party, or change your mind and not watch that thing together, but instead all go to bed so that you can be fresh in the morning, whatever that looks like for you. So I would say it's entirely normal, Lenny, and also make space for it to function in your family so that you're not overwhelmed when you do have those precious hours with your child after school.
Another question, what strategies do you have for drawing the line between promoting independence and ensuring health and safety? My son likes to do a lot of tricks, his word, that make my husband very nervous, but we know he's just exploring his abilities and limits. How do you handle that in the classroom?
Lynette, do you want that one?
I can take that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, the first thing I want to say is that experience is the best teacher. Now, I'm not saying that, you're gonna let your child get hurt, but like, if it's just gonna be a little bump, a little tiny boo-boo, let it happen so that they can learn. Um, and also I think define what is unsafe for the child and then ask the question. So when you see him approaching whatever the thing is, you can ask two questions like, are you making a safe choice right now? And if you've already had a previous conversation defining what is safe, what are safe choices, or like if there's already a definition, then you can ask that question, be like, are you making a safe choice? That's one. And then two, this depends on the thing. Like this one's good for like a climbing situation, but you can use it. You can say, what's your plan? I see what you're doing right now. Like I see what you want to do. What is your plan? So like if it's something tricky, like they're climbing something and it's like, okay, I see that you want to climb that. What is your plan after you get up there? How are you going to get back down? So that way they have a moment to pause and think about the action. Um, and and yeah, so he's saying he's exploring his limits. What are you get to set those limits? So like, what are the limits? What are the things that feel to you that are super unsafe? It's a hard no, you cannot do this. Set that line, and then they're gonna push it, but if you set it firmly and then stick to the limit that you set, they will stop going closer and closer to the line to try to try to push it. So I think having a conversation would be helpful of like, I know that you have so much fun climbing things, but climbing mommy's dresser is not a safe choice. You cannot do that. And when you do it, I will move your body away from the unsafe thing you're trying to do. So that's a hard limit. That line can't be crossed. But if he's climbing like the back of the couch, then you can be like, is that safe? What's gonna happen if you like if it's like a run and climb, like if you run and you flip over, what do you think will happen when you get to the other side of the couch? So kind of just like setting it up for them of what's unsafe and what's not. And then whatever hard limit you set, be so consistent with that. So like every single time he goes to climb that dresser, you're having the same exact reaction. That is not safe. I am going to move your body. And then you do that. And that's kind of what we do in the classroom. There's certain things where it's like, I'm going to let that happen. Like if I know that there's not going to be a lot of bodily harm or they're not going to get like extremely hurt or anything like that, but there'll be enough of a consequence that they'll learn the lesson. I just keep watch and I let it happen. But when it's like, you know, I don't know, you're taking a pinpricker and you're going to poke somebody, that's a hard limit. That is not safe. And you just repeat that. That is not a safe choice. And if you start using that language, then before the moment, like if you set up what is safe and what is unsafe, then when you do use the language in the moment, there'll already be a foundation there because you can't have the conversation about what's safe and unsafe when your child is doing the thing. They can't receive you in that moment. So you have the conversation beforehand and you set up what the hard limits are of what is unsafe to you and your partner. And you tell him. And then when he pushes the line, which he will, you have the same exact reaction and you reiterate what that hard limit is and then go from there.
And one more thing on that point. Can you all, I think, Erin, you've mentioned this before. Why don't we say, because I know that people are guilty of it, why don't we say be careful versus the language of, that's not safe? Can you kind of go into detail about that a little bit?
Sure. I think so. Sometimes it is about semantics and sometimes it's not. I think that whatever your home language is for that type of caution, um, can sometimes be filled with your own like fear and trepidation and doesn't give the child that marker for what you mean and what the actual point of safety is for if you weren't to be there. Because what you're really trying to do and what Lynette is doing with her questioning in those examples she gave is, again, you're preparing them for when you're not there and they're needing to make a choice without you. And so what you're in, be careful is like that's a spectrum. And also sometimes if we're too careful, we miss out on something that's really amazing for us in our life, or some a lot of really great adventures, are full of not being careful. But if you want your child to be able to make good decisions for you, for them when you're not there, what you need to say instead are things like words that have to do with safety. Make sure that you're being safe. And then when they don't know what that looks like, it's what does safe mean right now for you? And those types of conversations and that type of language is something that, first of all, they can say in their head when there's not an adult around or when there's not, a good peer influence around. What is safe for me? What does that look like? Because that's going to be different for everybody. Some children are more physically adept at getting across those monkey bars and they can do it and that's safe for them. Some other children can hardly reach and they would have to jump 3 bars and that is not safe. And so that's a universal thing. What's also universal about it is me asking that question of my children as a mom, what does safe look like for you? That's the same conversation I'm having when they're 6 and when they're 16. When we're talking about bringing their pencils and their tools to school in their backpack and having something sharp poking out. And it's the same as like when my older son's getting keys to the car and walking out the door. It's the same type of language that is evolving together as a parent and a child. And it's something that consistently implants in them so that we are rendering ourselves obsolete. So I think that's why the language is important.
Right. Strategies for letting your kiddo do a task independently without too much prompting when it's not a task they want to do. Power struggles. For example, putting their shoes on to leave when they don't want to leave.
Make it fun. And that can be hard because sometimes you're just not in the mood, but you have to tap into your inner child. If you make that a race or put a timer, I bet you can't put those shoes on before this timer goes off. Make it a game. Or like, can you put your shoes on faster than mommy? Or can you put your shoes on faster than daddy? And then obviously you have to pretend to put your shoes on really slow. But if you like, oh my gosh, I don't think you can beat me, and then you're putting your shoe on, and you can do what you can do too is like put your first shoe on really fast, like, oh, I bet you can't do it faster than me, and you put your foot in, and then you're gonna be like, oh my god, and then they're gonna want to be faster. If you don't have all that energy in you, then a little timer, like I'm gonna set a timer for 30 seconds, or I'm going to count to 30, and I bet you won't have those shoes on when I get to 30, and that could potentially help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what Arena said under her breath when she was reading that we might not have heard is the words power struggle.
Totally.
Yeah, so when you're in a power struggle with a child, as an adult, we're already kind of losing. Like we're already kind of at a space where like, oops. So what's really great is to try to avoid power struggles in general. When you're in them, you need to figure out the best, most gentle way out and the way that preserves your relationship. And I love that example from Lynette, making something fun, turning something to humor, letting them know that you're not up for the power struggle. Instead, what you're up for is a game or an interaction that benefits you both. Like that's the point of that. But to get to a place where you're not even in the power struggle to begin with, it's a really great idea to make as many things that you need from your child that are non-negotiables to handle the day, like brushing your teeth and getting some nutrition and being clean and, leaving the house, to make them like adult neutral as much as possible. And what I mean by that is use as many outside influences other than you, your presence, and your voice to inspire that child into action. So, to Lynette's example, the neutral piece would have been that timer, right? We're going to set a timer. The timer is going to tell you when you have to have your shoes on, not me, right? That timer is the thing that is that, okay, that's a neutral point. So, for children who, if you could, if you everybody has more than one step they need to take before they get out of the house. And while a 3-year-old's ability to process all the verbal directions and visible directions are going to be different than a 6 or 7-year-old, you can make some small, pictures around the house or visual signs that this is what needs to happen to get out of the house, so that you can say, well, what do we do next? Go look at your chart or go find what the next thing to do around the house is. I one time had to make for my youngest, who, has 3 older siblings, so she was used to like an entourage and never really having to do anything for herself because everybody would just do it for her and gather her belongings. And I knew as a mom and a Montessori teacher that she's not going to carry her siblings around the rest of her life. She needed to be able to gather her own things. We went through a conversation the night before and talked about all the things we needed to do in the morning. And we drew pictures of these things, everything from using the bathroom to brushing their teeth to getting her clothes on to, and we just put them in every spot of the house where that activity needed to happen. And her job was to find the next one and see what it was to do. And then all I was saying is, go to your next thing, go to your next thing. And I was handling, everything I needed to do in the house. And again, that's one season of my life with my child, but it's something in the classroom that we do. We do a lot of pictures around, we do a lot of visual cues for tasks, so that it's not about the adult voice and the adult command and the adult deciding what the next thing to do is and just feeding it to the child's mind. Because then when you're not there, they're looking around. I don't know what I do next. I've never had to think about it. I've never had to think about my next moment. It's just given to me. And that sets your child up to be a receptacle for other people's direction as opposed to their own. So that's a philosophical motive to have them be thinking for themselves. So I hope that helps that.
One other thing too, a power struggle is usually about choice. So you can provide a choice that still gets your
Yeah.
task. So instead of being like, let's go put on your shoes, we have to go, oh, hey, would you like to put on your red shoes or your black shoes today? Or like if it's brush your teeth, do you want to brush your teeth in mommy's bathroom or in your bathroom? So like it's still the task that you want, but you're giving them the autonomy to have choice. So that way it doesn't feel like you're just telling them what to do. They're getting to choose what they do. And it's like, it's super easy. Like just think of the task that you want them to do and create two options so that they can choose which one they want to do. And then you avoid the power struggle because then now they feel like they're getting to choose the thing, even though like they're still doing what you want.
So in that example, it would be, which pair of shoes do you want to put on?
Right, like which shoes do you want to wear your rain boots today or your Crocs? Do you want to like whatever it is, or do you want to put on your blue sweater for us to leave to match with your blue shoes today? Like whatever the choice is, just create the choice around the task that you want completed.
Any other questions? Well, it's been so nice having you all tonight. I hope that this was, I mean, I certainly learned so much from Erin and Lynette. I hope that you all have too. And of course, if you have any other questions, we are available for you. We always say too, come in for guided observations. It's always nice to see what's happening here at school too. And we really do appreciate having your children here. It is like a second home. So it's our honor truly to be able to give you all of this knowledge and experience and to be in this parenting journey together. So thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.